Welcome back, everybody, to Gringos Liberados. This is episode number 8, our weekly CBLOL roundup, summary, etc. podcast from the CBLOL English crew. My name is Trajan, and today we have RMC and Axeman87 with us. RMC, we don't normally get to see you here. It's a rare sighting to have you on the podcast here. How do you feel joining us once again on the recorded side of media?
Feel good. It feels good to be back, Trajan. Academy's been eating up all my time, unfortunately, so I haven't been able to chat about this as much. So really glad to be hanging out with the boys again.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into some Academy stuff later because Academy has been kind of a big through line of this whole season, honestly. It's been one of the most exciting things about it is the impact Academy has on the CBLOL. But Axeman as well, we'll be getting into some pretty big stories about the continuing Liberty run and the predictions that you're able to land right here. So how are you feeling coming off that last week now that playoffs is coming up?
I'm feeling really good. I feel like a lot of the teams that were having issues at the start are coming into their own, and we're seeing some other teams exposed a little bit, and those false sets that we had talked about last week are starting to fall through a little bit. Yeah,
we've hit that point of the season that we always seem to hit for the last few splits where things just start to turn and the fortunes of certain teams start to shift. And, like the Louds of the world wake up and remember how to play. Any team that has House on it forgets how to play. And we just end up shuffling back to... Normally, for the last few splits, we've shuffled back to the same thing. We've shuffled back to Loud Pain Finals. Everyone else is kind of floundering around, failing to really get it together when it comes on to playoffs. But who knows? Maybe we'll see something a little bit different. But let's start talking about these revival teams. Let's talk about specifically Red and Loud are the ones that we want to focus on here. Two teams that bounce back 2-0 weeks. Red with the second 2-0 week in a row, I believe. They are now 9-5, having been 5-5 before on a spree of 1-1s. And every week that goes by, 4x4 and myself with our Red Knids winning the split predictions get a little more smug and a little more hopeful. So how do we feel about Red Knids? Are we fully back to challenger tier, or are we just beating bad teams and
Well, we're definitely not just beating bad teams. They beat KaBuM. They beat VKS. So these are big teams that they're beating. I think they had an INTZ game in the last 4 of their games.
They righted that
to
wrong.
Start off. To start off their streak. I think part of anybody's streak though is an INTZ win. So I don't think that necessarily discredits it. It's a fairly short streak, but one of the things that I want to point out to people, and I think they pointed this out on the Brazilian broadcast last week, was that Red had not been a losing team at any point of this split. They had some pretty fraudulent losses, and that's not like a good mark on Red, but they had never had a losing week. It was always either 1-1 or 2-0, all the way up to last week, the week before last and last week, which are both 2-0 weeks. They've never been in a bad spot. We're talking about them turning it around. It's really that they were like kind of just like middle of the pack, and now they're starting to actually win and starting to actually turn things up.
Yeah, I mean, part of that, I think, as well, is the fact that this split, we could theoretically have had teams be on a positive streak and still not make playoffs. Heck, even right now, we've got a tie for 5th, right? So technically 10 teams. 50% would be the 5th spot. Our 6th spot team still has a winning record. Yeah. So I think that was the concern, and the fact that Red as well, they were coming in so hyped and just not living up to expectations. I think their hands were never in question. That's why they kept going 1-1. But this last week, I think we've finally seen them actually kind of wake up and actually play as a team for a change. Because up to this point, it felt a little bit like solo queue for this roster. And hey, props to them for still having a winning record with a solo queue style.
Yeah, they were cooking some weird stuff. I think they were trying a lot of things, especially in the bot lane, and they seem to have just reverted to what works. They seem to have found a strategy that works for them. I think most notably for me, Grevthar has started performing way better over the last couple of weeks, and he's still playing the majors. He's not shifted to he's not playing Ivor in mid now. He's not shifted away from a carry champions. Orianna is definitely kind of a supportive mage, but and that's where we saw that the tide turn for him. But he is still doing a lot of damage. He's building full damage and doing a lot of good things and working well with Aegis and Jojo in the way that we wanted him to. So I think that middle piece just kind of being fixed puts this whole roster back together in a sense. FMB has always been trying his best. Brunsey and Jojo have been, they were underperforming, but now they're kind of back on what works for them, and it's all just fitting together again. So I don't know if maybe it's just kind of, this is why you build teams like this, because they have so much veterancy and synergy. They will always go at least 1-on-1 kind of thing. They won't completely toss a week away. They've always got such a decent foundation to build on. And then once it all works, you start taking games off really good teams. And this is something that I noticed when I was looking at the record that they have, and they've only lost to, like, 2 of their losses are Fluxu and the first week 1 INTZ, which we're just, you know, week 1 was week 1. And they haven't actually lost to anyone else that's quote-unquote bad. You know what I mean? They've lost to Pain once, but they've also, I think, beaten Pain once. And they've lost to Loud, and also maybe beaten Loud. And they've beaten VKS twice. They've beaten 1-on-1 with KaBuM. So they don't have these, like, too many of these insane losses to Furia, for instance, or another to INTZ. And they don't actually seem to be struggling too much now. And I think that they do have, like, we felt really shaky on them. But now here, 9-5, with the context we have, they've actually put together a pretty strong split. And it really just depends on how they finish it out as to whether we can actually, you know, return to the finals, at least. Maybe. That would be good.
That would be, with a roster like that, anything but, I think, would be considered a bit of a disappointment for their fans, though. I didn't have them necessarily top 2 or grand finals. I also think it's not just Grevthar back on Mage as well. Aegis back on Maokai. Aegis has had some good carry performances, but I do think, like it or not, Maokai is incredibly strong. Dude. And Aegis might not like the champions. He might miss his flash of the champions because he's busy typing in chat when he shouldn't have been. But I think there's no denying that Aegis is really good.
Yes.
Champion, like it or not.
We need to get Maokai out, man. We need to remove this champion from the Rift. Why are we still giving it to our best junglers? I asked this on the broadcast like 2 weeks ago. I asked it 1 week ago, and I'm asking it here now. Why are we still giving Maokai to Karaoke? We're giving it to Aegis. We're giving it to Croc. It's insanity that we're giving these junglers Maokai. This champion is insanely broken, and like the next patch that came out today that we're going to end up on isn't even nerfing jungle Maokai. It's buffing jungle Maokai. They're massively buffing his clearing speed. Like, this has to be permanent. Trojan. This has to be permanent. We have to perma this.
They're starting to ban it against Karaoke. We're getting there.
we got one. We got one of them down. And then we'll remember that Aegis is going to get, now that Red has gone 4-0, so we go, oh shoot, we can't just let him have whatever he wants. It's crazy, dude. This champion is bonkers, and not just because of the support flex. It's just too good in the jungle, I swear.
It's tree time. It is.
It literally is. It really, really is. And we need to deal with it. So Red have been putting a good split together. Let's talk about Loud as well, who did get a 2-0 week after, I think, an 0-2 week, or maybe the 1-on-1 week. They have not been performing as well up till now. They played a couple more games, and watching them back, it really felt like this is a better team, like a good team versus a bad team kind of thing. They were fairly even through the early game, and then the bad team makes one bad decision at an objective. Good team gets a lead, good team just wins the game, is kind of how it felt to me. I don't know if you guys felt like there's any more we can take away from Loud. Are we kind of back on track now, or are we still suspicious from the very shaky last couple of weeks that we did have from them?
I think they're back. I think, Colossal Ruin Photo, like, it's typical of them. Week 6, they kick back in, because last week they did go 1-1, but it was to Pain and to Liberty. So they beat Pain, which is typical of Loud, and it's like, oh, Loud's back, they're beating Pain, everything's right in CBLOL. And then we have them losing to Liberty, but let's not forget how they lost to Liberty.
Yeah, they 90% beat Liberty and then lost. Like, they won the game, but their Nexus exploded. You know what I mean? Like,
and then they just Demasia'd all over the game, and not in a good way.
No.
So I think Loud is pretty much back where we're expecting. This team, I never doubted them, even though they were struggling the early half of the season. This is what they always do, right? And then now Robo's starting to, like, okay, guys, I'm going to stop trolling because we need to qualify. And then they're just going to start winning games again. That's it. I think their macro could still use a bit of work in the early game, but the patience is back. And Loud's greatest strength has always been their patience. When they're losing, they don't care. They don't panic. They don't start inting the game. When they're ahead, they know how to just keep playing to their strengths. And we're just kind of seeing that come back in. And it's up to teams to find ways to crack them. I don't think Liberty's answer and way they beat them is something that is replicable. And going forward, they've still got INTZ, Red, Los, and K-Stars. So I'm looking at Red or K-Stars to figure out a way to beat them. And I'm going to be honest, I think only Red can.
Yeah, that's always the feeling I've had, is that only Red has the source to actually defeat Loud in a best of 5, right? Like, I guess the jury's out on VKS, I think, as to why, because they're the newcomer at the top, 10-4. I guess we can, in theory, Pain must also be added in that conversation, but Pain, does Pain with Titan, is that different enough of a Pain to actually beat Loud, They're 1-on-1 with them, but regular season games don't have any effect on their playoff performance as far as we've seen. And I don't know, RMC as the Pain head, do you think Titan's version of Pain is able to do it? Do you think Titan's enough of a difference maker? Or Titan and Curry as well, not to discredit Curry? Or is it just going to be the same?
I know that Pain lost to Loud and Liberty, and a lot of people are hitting panic buttons. I'm actually really chill with them losing those games. Because I think for Pain, these losses come at a good time to kind of remind them, like, hey, wake up, right? Like, you guys dominated the first half, but kind of doesn't matter. It's more the end that matters. And so I'm kind of happy they lost now rather than in the playoffs and have to scramble to get things fixed. I do think Titan has been huge for this team. Repeatedly, we've seen Titan just change the nature of this team. They needed somebody who could pop off. Titan has been that guy. And for better or for worse, right? Like, sometimes he does throw the game a little bit, but I think the rest of Pain is solid enough that this is actually the perfect roster for Titan, and this is the perfect player, Titan, for Pain as well. So I'm actually very, very optimistic and hopeful that Pain does have what it takes now in the best of 5 to beat Loud. But again, we'll see if they fix their mistakes. Like, please, no more send up for Titan. It's a very good champion. It's just not what you bought Titan for. Like, Titan can play the champion.
Exactly.
But we want that volatility from Titan. That's why we asked for it.
Yeah.
So many AD carries fall for that trap, like X Factor AD carries. I remember, you know what? I won't name names. Never mind. I watch a lot of streamers, a lot of like younger AD carry talent, and they're playing these X Factor carries, and they always lose to Senna because Senna outranges them. Senna just has a bunch of utility built into the kit, and she does so much damage, especially right now. She's really strong right now. And they'll go, oh, Senna's so strong. Well, I'll play Senna. It's a trap. Don't do it. It's not what you're used to. It's not how you play the game.
It does not
it'll
play the
be
same,
so bad for you. It plays totally different from any of the other marksmen right now, and especially the ones you think of big playmaking abilities. And it's not good. Don't play them.
Yeah,
just ban it. Macau's got it.
Exactly, right? Like, I as a Jhin Senna player cannot play Vayne. Can't play that. Can't play Varus. I can't play Kalista, but I can play Jhin and I can play Senna because these champions do not play like traditional AD carries, and that works for me and it works for Macau. Let's put a pin in that, and we are going to come back to that quickly though, because we got RMC's thoughts on Pain versus Loud at this point. Axeman, give me your thoughts on VKS versus Loud. If in a theoretical playoffs matchup, as our other first place joint team, how much of a contender do you think VKS against the monster that is playoffs Loud, that is the unbeatable force for the last 3 splits? How much of a chance do you think VKS has against that force?
I love this matchup, Trajan, because it brings me to potentially my hottest take that I have that I wasn't even going to touch on the podcast. But you've kind of stumbled into my trap card here, which is that I think Lilyco is better than Tinowns, unironically.
This is like me Hedan over Robo. This is the new Hedan over Robo take of this split.
Yeah, no, it is. It really is.
Crazy.
And hey, if you look at the stats are like all on my side, man. It's so great. That small sample size coming in clutch. Holy cow! Hey, by the way, the last like 2 weeks haven't done anything to dilute any of those trivia facts that we had in the trivia content we did a while back when he had like a 14 KDA or anything like that. The last 2 weeks have, if anything, only made it stronger. His KDA is still at 10. Freaking 10. He's still the best KDA in the league. He's doing it on like crazy champions too, not just control mages. He's got a LeBlanc game in there, a Zier. It's awesome, man. It's so cool. And meanwhile, we've seen 10ounce kind of, I don't know, man, just not been the best. Not been the best on
He's
Loud.
just
He
been there.
He gets picked by Pilot. He gets picked by Pilot with the shuffle. Tough.
Yeah,
tough,
10ounce in the first few weeks, 10ounce was like the root of last split. He was carrying games. He was a massive influence. And then he died to Karma solo mid, and he's not been the same since. I'll be honest. He's been he's been there and he's been playing the game, and he's not been bad. He's not a bad mid laner, but he's just not been as much of a presence on the map as he was before. And I think that's why it still feels like Loud are they're definitely not there yet. You know what I mean? Playoffs hasn't started yet, so they're not going to be there yet. But that's one of the biggest things is 10ounce hasn't activated yet. Robo he stopped like going as crazy, but he's not roboing around. He's not blinding Renekton and solo killing twice in the lane. So we're still activating for Loud, but they did tidy themselves up a little bit. That's for sure.
I'm just saying, Robo's the one guy who's beaten Darius in the league. So
yeah, that's true. That is true. How Darius is becoming the like warping factor in top lane is a bit 6 years old or whatever. You know that I don't know. Crazy.
Did not have that in my bingo cards.
No, we didn't. No, our bingo cards are very fraudulent this split, for sure. Let's talk a little bit then. Let's actually talk about Liberty, because let's come back to that pin. So, 8-6, 6-game winning streak. I believe the longest, maybe an equal longest, but the longest winning streak we've had this split so far, because of so many of our teams are taking games off each other. The Loses and the Liberties are stealing games off our top teams, so they're not putting long streaks together. I think Loud might have had 5 games when they went to 5-1.
Pain had a 6.
Pain had a 6 as well. There we go. So equaling the top streak from 2-6 as well to 8-6, having such a slow start, and only getting wins through insanity factor. Now they're just kind of getting wins, and we're struggling to question them as much. So, Axeman, let's let you have out this one first as the local Liberty enjoyer. Why is this happening? What does Liberty have that even Lost doesn't have now, that Fluxu doesn't have now? What does Liberty have that our other mid-card contenders aren't quite able to find?
So I think the biggest point about Liberty I want to make is that it would be the biggest feat of coaching in CBLOL history to get this roster to playoffs. If they make playoffs, BLZ is just a god. He's going to be the highest paid person in the region. He has to be. He should be. The rest of the coaching staff should go on to like just stellar, out of this world careers. And like maybe each of them could get their own head coaching spot. I don't know. I don't know how that would pan out, but everybody definitely gets a raise at that point. You look at the roster and it's like 5 academy players.
And Mikau,
I think,
who's also kind of an academy player.
Yeah,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean he's done his time in academy as well, but Mikau's there too. And yeah, it's just raw coaching. You can see it in the play. The stats are honestly, like, I hate talking about stats. I've talked about it so much this split, and I hate it. But the stats really like tell you the story of how well this roster is coached. Everybody's stats are awful. Like Makes has a 2 KDA.
That's the thing.
It's so bad. And then you'll see them go up for a set play, and it's just like, oh, he got a pentakill. He was down 5 kills, and now he's got a pentakill. Cool. Okay, well, now that's slightly positive. And they're going and they're marching down mid for the Nexus.
It feels like the eye test is so essential for finding where these wins come from, because if you look at the stats, they don't even look as good as 8-6, like stats wise. Like there's none of the players are like, this is the guy that's carrying them. This is the guy that's consistently outperforming his opponents, and their jungler is really good and making all these advantages, or their mid laner is really, really good and he's doing all this. They're all kind of fine, like at this point. For an 8-6 team on a 6-game winning streak, none of them are like statistically monsters. But if you watch them play, you get the highlight after highlight after highlight coming out of this team, and that's where it feels like so many of these wins are coming from. It's not to say that they're like lucky or anything like this, but so consistently they're able to find really exciting, impactful moments in these games that turn them. And now they're getting the point where that's enough for them to now push a lead and win as well. It's not just clutch factor. They also have a way to close the game out consistently.
Yeah, and it's insane the growth, actually, specifically in the last couple of weeks. Because if you look at the first round robin, like, INTZ might have had the worst scoreline at the end of the first round robin. Liberty had worse stats than them as a team.
I'd believe that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and when we were talking about why, it was because they were scrappy, right? What they had, the basis of this team, was a very scrappy team, willing to fight at any time, any place, anywhere. Does it make sense? No. But they'll do it anyways. And they were catching teams off guard with that. That's why the plays look so incredibly clutch. But starting in that second round robin in week 5, we started seeing literal week-to-week growth. Week 5, they started winning their lanes, which I know it sounds really weird to call that an accomplishment, but before that, they were just off-timers, never catching the wave, fighting instead. Week 5, no. And Macau started waking up. We saw Smolder, we saw Senna, that bot lane completely stabilized. Week 6, we start seeing good, solid drafts. They start picking champions like Darius and actually setting up your team to allow the Darius to get into fights, knowing how to, get those odd picks online rather than just, you have to win your lane and do your own thing. No. Now we pick a team fight composition. We force them towards these objectives. Week 7, this week, was their best performance yet. One thing I've criticized CBLOL teams for is a lack of patience and a lack of proper setup. Liberty just showed us patience. One of our youngest, or I don't want to say youngest, but the newest teams, played a 40-minute game almost against KaBuM, where the final scoreline was 8 kills, 6 deaths. That's incredibly low. And at no point during that game was I going, Liberty might lose this. No, Liberty was in control, and they were playing one of the cleaner macro games in CBLOL. Yeah, this is a Belzy diff right now. Like, I don't know, Belzy and the rest of the coaching staff, I don't know how they did it, but they've turned one of our most volatile teams to now one of our more cerebral teams. It's incredibly patient. Belzy, Turtle, you guys are miracle makers.
Yeah, because Turtle came from Fluxu last time, and that was a team that just seemed to be unable to fix the issues, and the issues only worsened over time, and they lost control of how to play the game as the season went on. And this is a complete reversal to that. They are learning, we can see them learning to play League week on week, and then harnessing all the talents they have and still keeping a unique flavor to their gameplay and their drafting that allows them to get an advantage, like a unique advantage over even Pain, who they are 2-0 over. They're 2-0 over Pain. No one else is 2-0 over Pain. They're half Pain's losses is Liberty. It's crazy. So that there is something special going on here. They definitely have a bit of an INTZ feeling about them, as in INTZ from last split. And whether they could go, I could easily see them. Well, I say easily, like best of fives is such a different ballpark, but versus even teams, like Red or KaBuM, who are above them currently, but are very shaky most of the time. I could see them like losing control of a series and going down to Liberty for sure.
And actually, I want to hop on that point a little bit, because I agree with you, Trajan. And what's interesting to me is KaBuM is the other really well-coached team. Coach CL probably for me is best coach to split so far. But I don't see KaBuM beating teams like Red, like Pain, like Loud when they're not trolling, like KaBuM potentially. But you're right, I can't see Liberty doing that. And that to me is insane. This team feels like, on a good day, they could actually be the best team in CBLOL on a good day.
Yeah.
But their consistency is not quite as good as KaBuM yet.
Yeah. The only other thing I want to touch on is to focus in on Macau a little bit more, because we were dunking on Macau at the start of the split, and with good reason. He was absolutely dire in bot lane. Now we've ditched the Varus, we've ditched the Callista. You go back and look at his match history, and it's like meta AD carry, meta AD carry, meta carry, loss. And then Smolder wins, Senna wins, Sivir wins. He's just not an AD carry guy. He's not an attack speed guy, because at this point, Macau, and that's fine. Yeah. He doesn't need to be. It's evidently fine. So I guess, how do you guys feel about Macau then just kind of ditching these traditional, or not traditional necessarily, because the Sivir is a very traditional AD carry, but like meta AD carries, just picking what works for him? And do you think this actually is a weakness at this point, that he isn't able to play these meta picks, or do you think what works for them, and they're fine as long as they can get Macau something that he's comfortable on?
My thing, I love what they did recently, or what they've done recently, not just with like switching out the normal AD carries for things like Smolder and Senna, but notably like moving more towards something that's like, look, we win this game at like a 25-minute fight in the mid lane. It's going to be, if we lose the fight, we lose the game. Just like their Loud win, right? You think of that prototypical, this is it. We gotta strike now. We gotta strike hard. And the only thing that's going to be able to do it is Smolder, and he's going to execute a bunch of them because we just hit 225 stacks, and we got to do it now. They took that and they ran with it, right? We saw Ziggs, we saw Senna. Ziggs in particular, I think is great because you think about like, okay, how can we get Mikau to dish like 1,000 damage on everybody in one instant and then run down mid and end the game? And it's like, oh, it's Ziggs. Okay, that's how we do it because he's going to take all the turrets down and he's going to execute them with Satchel, and he just drops the Mega Inferno Bomb and hits like 3 people, and that's all Piloto and makes need to win the fight. And it's great. Same thing with Senna. You know, we just get to a point in the late game where we have to pull the trigger and then we deal a bunch of damage and then we're good. I think it's awesome. I think if they continue with this, they might have actually like found a line that they could beat anybody with, which is really, really nice. I think something about Liberty, we kind of alluded to it a little bit just now, is head-to-heads. While they're on a 6-game winning streak, now, earlier, they were not. They were not on that at all. They were on... Yep. It was like a 4-game loss streak, and then a win, and then 2 losses previously to that. They have a winning head-to-head against Pain Gaming, and no one else in playoffs contention. They have 1-1 is the best they got for everybody else. The only other head-to-head they win is INTZ. They could potentially flip that on Fluxu, and I think Loss, but even... they could have a winning head-to-head with Fluxu. Everyone else is going to be a 1-1 at best. So if we talk about playoffs contention, they like really have to win out because they're not going to win any tiebreakers.
Yeah, the one team they crushed that's important is so far away from them in the standings that they might not have to leapfrog them with a head-to-head.
Might not
like,
matter. Yeah.
Pain's going to be waving at them 4 slots ahead going, we don't care if we lost to your tiebreaker, bro. Like, we're already here. So that is notable that Liberty might end up... It would be tragic if this continues for Liberty and they end up getting pushed out because they've got too many 1-to-1s and don't have a good head-to-head over something, but I'll leave it to the League Ops team for CBLOL to work out how that shakes out.
Yeah, right.
How that
they
comes
could win.
through.
I'm pretty sure they could win every game and lose to Fluxu and they'd just be out.
Somehow it would just be possible, and that would just be an absolute nightmare. But
no, I'm comfortable with where Liberty is right now. Their remaining games are Kate Stars, Los Grandes, Red, and Fluxu. I think if they win 2 of that, they'll be fine.
Surely they wouldn't get they wouldn't get pushed out of playoffs with 10 wins, would they? RMC? Surely no one's ever been pushed out of playoffs with 10 wins.
No one's
That's
ever
never
done
happened.
That. Yeah.
So
because both Los and Fluxu are on the docket, I think they'd have to lose to both, and those 2 would have to absolutely pop off to actually knock Liberty out.
Fluxu especially. So they'd have to go clean for the rest of the season.
I think Axe was saying that. Oh no, Los Grandes is the one they have the losing record against. So, that'd be spicy if it did happen. I'm kind of down to see it just because I love ties, but I do want to talk about Mikau as well quickly too.
Yeah.
We've been very harsh on him, but if you look at his losses, right, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 losses, 4 of which were on Lethality Varus. So I actually blame the Lethality Varus. He's played 5 games of Varus, and his 1 win came from on-hit Varus. So I think it's more to do with Mikau's playstyle, that he isn't as dominant in the early phases of the game, in the laning phase, and I don't want to completely put that on Mikau either, because I do think the league has some incredible laning AD carries. In fact, most of our AD carries are actually laning AD carries in CBLOL. So I think Mikau coming in from Academy, coming from a split off, he's just a little bit rusty in the beginning, and so he struggled a little bit. And now that he's warmed up, now that the team has figured out a style, we're going to play for makes in the early game anyway, so Mikau go on something skilling that can survive. That's the sort of magic bullet they have. Can Mikau play early game? Maybe. Will we see that? Maybe. If everybody want to try things out, will they win with that? That's the big question.
Yeah, and there have been games where enemies have banned like 5 AD carries away from Mikau. He's then just picked something off meta and won the game. Yeah. If we replace all of the good AD carry bans with all of the champions he's played, basically, of the last 5 weeks, we just ban Senna, we ban Smolder, we ban Sivir, maybe Ziggs, why not? They seemed happy to just focus a lot of useless bans at him, right? Ban Ziggs, and then we just ban Darius, maybe. And then, like, is this enough? Do we then just force him to play good champions and then play badly? Or Is there? There's still Karthus. There's still Karthus.
We still got
My bad.
Karthus.
I forgot Karthus, guys. That's on me.
I don't know if he actually plays it, but it feels like that'd be a
why not? Why not,
Right
Mikhail? Just play Karthus. So
I like the Mikhail laning angle too, RMC, because it's not even that Mikhail's like a bad laner. It's just that he's bad at doing one very specific thing, which is like surviving pre-6 dives.
Yep.
And that's why on Liberty so often First Blood goes to Cavallo, is because everybody's decided the way to deal with Liberty in the first round robin, and they were totally correct. Liberty lost so hard in the first round robin. Was just, hey, we take 3 guys down bot side and we're gonna kill this old man, and then he's not gonna be able to do anything about it because he has old hands and he can't do anything. And it's fine because he doesn't have Chains of Corruption yet. And Liberty figured out a way to get Cavallo First Blood every time and to take maybe 2 down with them, and that was it. They just got scalers, so it doesn't matter if he gets dove. That was their adaptation.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about the rest of the map, really, in detail. You know, we've touched a little bit on Makes and how well he's doing with the Darius pick.
Makes so much in lane.
He
does.
My God. But he leads the lane and the league, I think, in solo kills. So, you know, there's a lot going on up there. There's a lot, and he's got a pentakill. So... Makes I'm okay. Yeah, he is. He's scrapping all the way down. And then for Drake, Hero, and Pilot as well, we've already praised Pilot a lot over the last few weeks, but I'm really loving this mid jungle duo, man. It seems very, very easily able to contest all of our traditionally strongest, all of our most active mid jungle duos. Pilot, I'm waiting for him to do like anything wrong this year. I haven't seen him like make a bad play in 2024. It's kind of crazy, and he has also solo won at least a couple of games with a big outplay in a critical moment. So goddamn, Pilot is just trucking, dude.
Yeah, he's doing really well.
I'm waiting for Drake here to pop off. They've given him like carry champions quite a few times right now. And it's kind of funny because coming into the split, I was like, oh, Drake Hero is probably the brightest part on this roster for me. We've seen Piloto, Pilot, we've seen Mikhail before. Makes was okay in Academy. Drake Hero's the champion. You know, he's the guy who's going to lead them on. And he comes in. And this guy right now is probably the least impressive player on this roster. And I want to be very clear. That's not because he's bad. That is just how amazing the rest of Liberty have been this split. Drake Hero is still really incredibly solid. And if this guy is the floor for your roster, there's a reason they're on a 6-win streak when they're doing this incredibly well.
What I like too, that's been another adaptation, is the Drake here. They just put him on like farming junglers too. After everyone decided it was just gonna be like 3v3 bot, we're diving Mikhail. We got like Viego, we got Graves, and we just seen like Drake here run up the CS numbers. And again, it's all for that 25-minute fight that they're gearing up for, right? It's just so he could be like level 11 and have like 2-3 items, and hit all those timers he needs to, and then like lay down some serious damage. I think the reason we haven't seen him like carry that hard is just the type of fight that Liberty are going for. Like when you're in the coaching room, I'm saying coaching room. I talk so much about Liberty's coaching. I genuinely don't know anything about their coaching process. So they're in the coaching room, and then they're like, okay, so Pilot's gonna come in with the Zir, get the big shuffle. We'll get the damage down from the Smolder. Kasanti's gonna be on the flank. He's gonna come in and get the stragglers. And Drake Hero's like, well, I'm level 11. I do a lot of damage. What should I do? And they're just like, I'll just hit him, I guess. Dude, whatever you're gonna do. He's like, all right, well, cool. I guess I'll do that.
Okay, so Liberty, we're feeling very good about. We're feeling good about them even against some of our top teams in playoff matches. So we'll see if they can continue this run of good form. They do still have some good teams to play, VKS, Red notably, and we'll see if they can keep this one through and if they can maybe make it back into playoffs. I don't believe I've ever seen Liberty land further than 5th in playoffs. I blink they came 5th, as in like Liberty, not like Vorax or whatever. So So, yeah, I don't want to get under Dia's skin right now, forgetting about Vorax.
Let's see. We need to call Dia right now.
But I think they came 5th over NetShoes Miners one split since like 2022 or something like this. But we haven't seen them do much for a while, right? But this is definitely a team that could make a run. Hopefully they get into playoffs. Now, the other team that we really have to talk about here on a much sourer note, because I'm hosting, so it's going to be sour. I'm going to make it sour, is KaBuM. KaBuM. are now 8-6. 4 losses in a row. What started as one questionable tank Azir build has now turned into 4 losses and a steady deterioration of gameplay coming out of this team. And it's happening again, guys. It's happening again. House is crashing and burning, and it's all Fluxu all the time. And it makes me sad. Who's got an idea as to why this is happening? And what specifically is going wrong, besides just the curse that lies on House's household?
Before that, let's put this in context, right? Their 4 losses were to K-Stars, Fluxu, Red, Liberty. Liberty and Red this last weekend when they've been peaking. Or when they're on the upswing. I don't think they peaked yet. So, to be fair to them, they did have a rough 2-week schedule.
Yeah.
But then there's Fluxu, and that's beyond me.
Yeah. And that one was... I think were they ahead in that game? They might have been far ahead and then lost. I'm not sure. I checked the gold grass recently, but it was... It seems like we've just... a lot of people have been pointing fingers at Malrang and saying things like, oh, Malrang hasn't been doing enough, right? So, Axeman, do you have a thought on Malrang, given your quick response to that?
Yeah, my dude is trolling. What's with the Trundle pick, dude? Hello? We troll literally now? Is that how it goes? Yeah, I don't know. I think if looking at Liberty and being like, oh yeah, teams are losing because Makes is beating them, is such a shallow view of what Liberty is doing. That it's like what RMC said. I think Drake Hero is the worst one of them, but only because all of the rest of them are doing so incredibly well. It's not like a Makes diff. The issue wasn't that you had to shut down Makes and make sure he doesn't pop off. He's not popping off in lane. He's not popping off in these skirmishes.
Yeah, Lonely's not feeding Makes in that game.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not an issue. So for us to pick Trundle into this team that was Graves, Syndra, Senna, and Nautilus,
I don't know how we ended up with the
just
Trundle
absurd. Just absurd. I mean, I guess like the argument here is that Makes is going to be a big tank that they need to cut through, and then Nautilus is going to be farming, so he's going to be big too. But why are we picking Trundle into a team comp with 2 big frontliners and one of them's a support tank, right? That didn't make any sense at all. This was also my favorite Nautilus game I think I've ever seen, because it was farming Nautilus, which is always a good time, but also it was farming Nautilus into a team that only ever had a prayer of dealing magic damage, so he didn't have to build armor, which was so much fun, dude. Hollow Radiance was an awesome first item pickup. It let Liberty set up these set plays that they're so well known for so much easier. You'd look at so many of the plays. I know I'm talking about the Liberty game, but hey,
we're just talking about Liberty game.
We're talking about Liberty the whole. Sorry, this is the Liberty episode again. Yeah. It allowed Nautilus to just go and push waves solo while everybody else set up objectives, which is so OP. And then Thimblewinter, Anathema's finishing it off was so cool. Like Netsuno, I don't think could physically kill Nautilus by the end of it. Cavallo was awesome in that game. And yeah, Malrang just did nothing, but you can look at like all of KaBuM's games for the last 4, and it's a similar story, right? I mean, Vi going into Xayah, what was the ruling there? That didn't make sense. Are we going for Grevthar on play in that play? Why do we pick that? And the play is just not good either. He's 0-5 in that game.
Yeah,
in the red game. Sorry.
I just want to question, like, what was wrong with the Trundle pick? I actually like the Trundle pick into Liberty.
The Trundle pick wasn't good. So Trundle is an anti-tank pick.
Yeah.
And they picked it into a comp that doesn't have like big tanks. So I would pick Trundle into Weiser if you pick the full tank, because I think Weiser's like a really big player on Pain, and we need to shut him down to win the game. You don't need to shut down Makes. Makes isn't the reason they're winning the game. It doesn't make sense. Not only that, he's picking K'Sante, and when K'Sante goes all out, he loses a bunch of his tank stats, and you can't ult them away from him.
Yeah, but you can ult him before he does that. And also, you're into 2 immobile champions with Syndra and Senna, who can't deal with the pillar.
I think I think Pilot was a huge part of that win for Liberty, and how well he was using Scatter of the Week to cancel engage attempts from KaBuM. I don't know. I think Pilot was watching back through that game, which was long and very light on kills, as you touched on earlier. There were a lot of times when KaBuM was trying to kill Liberty and failed to do so, and I think Pilot with both on the aggressive catches and on defensive plays. I think Liberty were able to escape from KaBuM very often in that game. So I don't know if like Trundle was fine for this and Liberty just played super well and KaBuM maybe didn't have enough kind of cunning in the way that they were attempting to do this, or if there could have been a better pick for Malrang that had a more consistent way of getting onto them. But maybe that should have been the Vi game, you know what I mean? But I think that KaBuM were trying things, but they just weren't working in that game. And then Liberty got to a point where they have full stacked up Syndra, farmed up Graves, stacked up Cassante, who's massive, Senna, who's stacked up. Like they've just got everything they need. And then the last fight was just like seemed unwinnable for KaBuM. They were just getting steamrolled by a team that's very heavily scaled up and just spent the whole time effectively holding them at arm's length. So that was like a game that, as you mentioned, RMC, really felt like Liberty playing excellent League of Legends, playing to the strength of their compositions and effectively countering what KaBuM were trying to do. I don't know if necessarily their draft was actually great at doing it or if the players were the ones being great at doing it. Maybe both.
Yeah, I'd argue. I think actually it's the players. The draft I actually thought was fine. Like this is not their worst draft by any means. Like you mentioned, Nax, the fact that when up against Red, they blinded that buy so early and they got slammed by the Xayah, which is one of the hard counters. I mean, Tom Catch was available as well if they wanted to do that. So I think KaBuM's drafting hasn't been the best in the league by any means. But I think there is something fundamentally wrong with the roster and how they're playing as well. Because if you look at this roster, Lonely, who was supposed to be the best piece on KaBuM that they retained, Malrang, import hyper-aggressive jungler, who's played a world and stuff. You've got House, who's always supposed to be one of the best mid laners in CBLOL. Netuno, who was Elo held, Seo's MVP. To a certain degree, I almost feel like your draft shouldn't matter unless you somehow completely counter yourself in draft. This team should still be able to perform, and we're just not seeing that. Even in their game against Flux as well, right? Like that, something is just wrong. Seo's still performing, but where's the Netuno we remember from like way back, right?
I think Seos
when he was
is
popping
performing
off, killing
sometimes. I think Seos is getting a little covered for by the community as well. I think a lot of people are like, Seos is still great, guys. Don't worry. Seos is, why is no one, he's still trying. He's trying a lot of weird shit, man. Like that bot lane they make decisions together, and some of the bot lane has been, as I said last week, maybe the weakest part of KaBuM in the first 20 minutes at least. Now there's more weaknesses to look at, but they have been really bad, and I'm not going to absolve Seos of that. You know what I mean? I think Netuno as well has made some pretty bad choices, but I think Seos is getting a little bit covered, and Netuno, they both deserve some of the blame for that, and it just seems like it's not clicking as a team. Lonely's not falling behind. He's effectively playing weak side. Malrang, up until the last couple of weeks, I thought was doing really well. I think he was like he wasn't like being coin flippy. He was being a really good jungler. He was being like Croc when he's on his game, basically, up until a couple of weeks ago. And now, maybe it's that the draft is just, they're not really kind of thinking ahead with the draft, and they're maybe being a bit formulaic and a bit simple with it, and then they get countered by things like Xayah, and maybe they're just relying too much on trying to be an assumed better team, which they aren't, it seems. And I don't know, it just seems like another just kind of ephemeral, we've just decided to be worse now. We've just decided to play worse. And it's frustrating to try and analyze in some ways. And yeah, they were up against good teams, or at least teams that were playing particularly well, having good weeks, having good streaks, etc. But we need to like stop this bleeding this week, man. We need to stop this now. Otherwise, we're just going to end up maybe not even 6th with Liberty and loss, like only a couple of weeks losses behind. So
yeah,
at the very least, I can look at the stats and say House is still doing 35% of his team damage. Mans is still putting up the numbers, man. He's still picking mages, doing huge damage, trying to do things, but even he's not having as much success. And it's just, I just don't understand, why we're doing the drop off again, I guess.
Yeah. And it's scary for them too, because as you mentioned, they're only 2 wins ahead. To put this in context, bottom 2 teams, or out the 6 teams, top 4 start in the upper bracket of double elim. The bottom 2 teams have single life. They're starting the lower bracket of double elims. So for KaBuM, like it's really scary for them, because not only do you not want to drop out of top 6, but you also want to be in top 4. You are 1 win behind, but you shouldn't happen in this position. You guys were firmly up there in the top 3 for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then now, and I don't think there's something you can like kind of triage and say, okay, just play a bit safer. opposite. I think you go extreme. Maybe it's a hot take. I think you just go nuts. Like this roster, forget about not losing and aim for the wins, because I need to see signs of life. The last 2 games, this last weekend, feels like they just kind of keeled over and died. And for House, playing for scaling is okay. That is literally how he's always played anyways. Like, but for Lonely, for Nintendo Seos, and for Melrang, you guys aren't scaling players. You guys are lane dominant players. We talked about how there's some AD carries, a lot of AD carries in Brazil are lane players. Natuno is meant to be a lane player. If you're not winning the lane, that's just not the Natuno we know, we love, and we wanted on this KaBuM roster. So he needs to step up. Malran needs to start getting aggro again. If you pull a Croc and die at a level 2 invade, I can forgive that. But if you don't gank till 6 and then kind of try and 1v3 at that point and die, I'm a lot less forgiving.
Yeah, we forgive Rock for that all the time. You know, we're ready with open arms for you, Malrang. We're ready to forgive. But we need to see something. We need to see something, and hopefully we'll see it this week. So KaBuM can right the ship. The last topic that we need to touch on here before we look at a couple of questions from the community is the NinjaKiwi of it all with INTZ, where we call our most ELO held award at the end of each season the NinjaKiwi award, or at least I do, because it was him for 3 years in a row. And it looked like it was going to be him again, honestly, from the first couple of weeks. But it's feeling a little bit over the last couple of weeks like even NinjaKiwi is not up to the standard that we've seen. And I guess let's just interrogate that a bit. Do we think NinjaKiwi is actually struggling? Is he actually playing worse? Or is INTZ just completely hapless and there's no way to look good on AD carrying this season when your team is that bad?
Well, let's point this out. This last loss against Furia, that was solely on NinjaKiwi.
That Kai'Sa play was one of the biggest goofs we've seen. That was a Titan goof, you know what I mean? Just like, we just fly in and die, and the game ends. And you're like, well, we were fine. They were fine. They were fine. They were even winning position. And then he just...
that is a 5-star Uber Eats delivery right there. Like...
completely tossed it. So I think that was why, that was like kind of the last thing we saw, right, of NinjaKiwi at the end of that week coming into this recording was that play. And it's like, that's not the note we want to end on, right? So taking the season into a totality, Axeman, how do you feel about NinjaKiwi so far? Are we still putting him as a shoo-in for the ELO held award, or does he have some part to play in this INTZ meltdown?
I think so. Like, there's the argument I'm gonna make is that he's the most ELO held player of all time, and we've actually transcended like what we thought was rock bottom. We've like tunneled deeper and found a cave below rock bottom that's like even hotter and even more hell. And NinjaKiwi is in free fall into that cavern and has not hit the bottom yet. The Kai'Sa play was really bad, and that wasn't a good game for NinjaKiwi like anyway, but he's still like far and away the best player on this roster. And is still consistently ainted by his teammates, man. I mean, NinjaKiwi will come into a game, and at 10 minutes, the game is over. And it's just, it's not a question of like, hey, NinjaKiwi, how are you going to carry this game and get it back? It's just, what are you going to do on stage for the next 10 minutes while you lose the game? And I think that we're at a point right now where he's lost so many games in a row that he's like, I'm just going to Kai'Sa ult in there and get some damage, I guess. Because it doesn't matter.
Maybe like, I need to get this win. My lord, we need to get this win. I am going to go get this win for us right now. And then just kind of panics or makes a bad judgment call. We've all been there. The CBLOL has been there, you know? So it is definitely a high pressure situation. We've already seen the post that Tay made about the pressure that he is personally under. NinjaKiwi probably escapes most of that because, you know, we, like most people, I think, generally see him as less accountable and as you say, a bit ELO held and not to blame for most of it. But you can be pushed into a bad choice like that. And, you know, Titan's been there, Bruncey's been there, all the greats of this region have been there. So...
yeah, and the other point I want to make about this is that it's been said by a number of industry insiders at this point in Brazil with their boots on the ground that this is not a player or a coach issue and that it is an organizational issue with management, with the INTZ organization. We've heard that from maybe a half dozen people who have spoken out. And it's normally from people who have pretty galvanized careers too. So you definitely get that thing where it's like, we're not going to hear the real story while everyone's under contract. We're going to hear about it maybe next split. or the split after that, what is actually going on in INTZ right now. And I don't want to speculate because I don't know my boots on the ground. I don't know what's going on over there. And I would not want to malign like what is a truly historically excellent CBLOL roster.
Yeah.
One of the best, not roster, CBLOL organization, one of the best to do it ever. With from a point of ignorance, right? But I do want to elevate those voices that are saying, hey, this is on INTZ, not any of these players. And that's something I want to echo too, is that when we say, hey, is this it for Tay? Have we given Yampy enough chances? You know, is damage just like perma bad now? I would say no. In fact, I would run this entire roster back on another org because I don't think it's that bad. I think these guys are actually pretty good. And I don't think that the issues they're having are actually with their play or with their abilities at all. I think it's that they're having some difficulties that I don't want to specify from a point of ignorance.
Yeah, I still don't understand. I'm with 404 on this. 404 was voting for INTZ last week because we cannot believe that INTZ is in this state right now. Right? You look at this roster and their coach, Aoshi, too, who did such a great job last split. It's like, what on earth is happening here? Like, you can see, I still remember that it was on Bronzioka too, you know, the moment of Aoshi where they lost, or actually, it wasn't even the game-losing team fight. It was the team fight before that. Aoshi was kind of just like giving up. He could not believe the way his team was playing that fight, right?
Yeah,
I can't believe it either. It's absolutely insane. And NinjaKiwi, by the way, statistics again, we can't call him Elo Hell, or we can't call him bad because he's still doing the highest damage share of any AD carry. Second highest in the league, only behind House, who you mentioned, Trajan. Like, NinjaKiwi is still trying. My fear watching that play from NinjaKiwi is that he's given up.
That he's given up, yeah.
After how many splits? This guy debuted on, what was it, that 14-man Renska roster, where everything was just insanity, right? And then he plays through like a whole bunch of bad teams. I've never seen NinjaKiwi give up, and I'm hoping it was a mistake and not that he's just mentally ground down, bro.
Yeah, it definitely reads to me from just as a more hopeful standpoint that it's more like just feeling he's just under too much pressure to be the reason that they win a game. He's doing the most damage. He's, by many like metrics and judgment, seems like the best player on this team and their best chance to get a win. And I think he feels that and was like, I am going to get this win. And unfortunately, it was the wrong choice because the pressure was too high. I do kind of feel like Aoshi might have given up by looking at these cameras. Like, at the start of the split, he was out of his seat. He was shouting. He was hooting and hollering. Probably, you know, pretty upset at how the team was playing the games. And now they cut to camera after a bad INTZ fight, and he's just like smiling at the screen. He's just like chuckling to himself, man. It seems like he's like, this is what's the point? What are we doing here? Like, how is this possible? It seems like he has become a little bit more listless, and as someone who had such a good result with the INTZ kind of hybrid dev roster from last time that made 4th, with NinjaKiwi as a central piece, it is an insane kind of crash to earth for him. And we know that he has the capability to head up rosters that can vastly outperform the sum of their parts.
100%.
And I don't know if I would run this whole roster back. I do think there are changes that I would make to try and upgrade this roster. I think there are players waiting in the wings to maybe step up, like maybe I'm not gonna not to bring back the minus propaganda, but like maybe we just drop Annie in there instead of Ithusa. Maybe we just put Annie back up. I'm waiting for him to get another chance.
Where did Nosferus go? Can we just
third
clone
division?
Nosferus?
Yeah, like
can we clone him?
I mean, have you seen Annie recently?
Yeah, so
he's actually not doing too badly in the academy. That's it. Okay. Now that you bring up mid lane, Trajan, actually, I do want to talk about Ithusa for a little bit, because I feel Ithusa might be my most Elo Hell player this split, even above NinjaKiwi.
Really?
Yeah. Because
okay. Explain.
You guys have seen him only in CBLOL, and I agree. His CBLOL performance has been underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah.
But I have seen this guy in Academy, and he was much more lively. He was much more lane dominant. Even when he's losing the lane, he's still making mid-game plays. On this INTZ roster, I fear for NinjaKiwi's mental, but I also fear for Ithusa. This guy's a rookie. It's his first split in CBLOL, and he gets chucked on a team with a pretty decent following, with a lot of history, and then he's smothered to death by how everything is performing. This is not a fair shake for Ithusa. This is like the nightmare debut for any player. At least Renska had good branding, even while they were crapping the mid with NinjaKiwi. They had good branding and people were enjoying them. This INTZ, there's just so much doom and gloom surrounding it right now. And people aren't blaming Aithusa necessarily, but Trajan, much like yourself, I feel like every time people are talking about this roster, one of the first things they talk about replacing is the mid lane. Yeah. And for Aithusa as a new rookie, like, man, it's just not fair for him.
Yeah, it's maybe not an environment where success can be easily cultivated. But I might have said the same thing about Makes when we came into this split, and yeah, here we are. So I guess that's the difference. That's the Beelzy turtle diff, as Iceman said. So yeah, we'll see if INTZ they get closer and closer to a win every week, man. I swear. Like I feel like they're gonna get one over the line before the end. I don't think we're gonna see the 1-X KaBuM record from last split. I think they'll get one.
The schedule remaining. I think they get one more shot. That's it. Loud, KaBuM, Fluxu, and Pain.
Okay, so they need to beat Fluxu, realistically, is what we're saying here. I mean, Loud could certainly... We've seen Loud do crazier things, I don't know. So, I think they might get one more under the belt, but no more. And we just have to go next on this one. We just have to make it to the end of the split, try and keep the heads up, and then go next. Now, the last thing... I think... Or was that the last thing? We do have to talk about... potentially before questions. I'm trying to remember if someone can check if there's anything I haven't touched on yet.
If we want to touch on the academy.
Oh yeah. RMC. Yeah, since we have RMC here, let's just give us, because the academy, as we kind of set up at the start, because academy has been such a big part of the narrative of this season, RMC has been watching a lot of academy, and I wondered if there was anything, any players, any teams, anything you wanted to bring up as something that we should be keeping an eye on that might be gracing our CBLOL screens in the near future, or anything particularly interesting you think is going on down there in the second div.
Fair enough. Actually, we just finished the regular season because they have 12 teams, the 2 T3 teams that came through the Liga GG promotion. They do a best of one round robin into a full 12-team playoffs, which is actually really, really fun. So I would recommend checking out the playoffs as it happens, because every team will get at least 2 best of 3s, which I think is really good experience for these up-and-coming players. That said, regular season finishes, and Pain Gaming #1. Let's go!
Oh, there it is.
Objectively, they're currently #1 because they win the head-to-head against KaBuM, having won the best of 1 against KaBuM. So let's talk about KaBuM for a sec, because that is going to be the benchmark. They are a CBLOL team. They have Pitao, formerly of Furia. Yep. They have Scary, who had a shot at in CBLOL on KaBuM and
looked pretty good
there.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they have Skuro and Krasdale as well, playing up there, both playing for KaBuM previously, and they have Dioj in the mid lane, who is right now pound for pound probably the best upcoming mid laner, and even last split actually probably outperformed Aithusa, but I don't think KaBuM's ever going to let that one go, because I was surprised they let Super Clever go already this split too. Let's not this. And Pain beat them, so Pain's incredible right now. KaBuM, their academy roster is incredibly stacked, much like their CBLOL roster, though performing much better than the CBLOL roster. Kate Stars have been doing really, really well as well, and again, I feel like it's a coaching difference. Tukui, Laleko, Linkus, all of them play Orianna. I don't know what's going on with Kate Stars. They have an Orianna coach there.
Literal ballers. That's
the shockwave clips are too good, man.
They are.
Yeah.
Too
so
good.
Honestly, it's incredible how well they're playing. So that's been interesting. Flamengo Academy. So
Flamengo
people remember
Academy?
Flamengo, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah,
they
lost their spot. Yeah, but they're back in the academy. They took over Team GE, but their roster has Goot, Steps, and Bounty on it. And they are in 4th place, right behind those top 3. So I think a lot of the players that you might want to keep an eye out will probably be on those particular rosters. Annie's on Loud Academy, currently 5th. They've got a good AD carry, Sant, as well, who's been popping off a little bit. And their top laner, Curdy, came out of nowhere for me. He's brand new. Their top laner is somebody to keep an eye on. Probably not Nick Split right away. But if not, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Curdy the year after. Honestly, he's coming up real fast. Reminds me a little bit of Makes to a certain extent. Other than that, Red Academy in 6th place right now. Their mid laner Peko is popping off quite a bit. Again, not right away, but maybe give him 2 splits. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of movement coming up from Academy, and the fact that Shino and Steiner have moved up and actually done well. Again, they weren't necessarily players I was super high on in Academy. They were decent.
They didn't have like any results to speak of, right? It was just like sort of 7th, 8th, 6th-ish for a couple of splits, and they had no results. But like kind of the same for Makes, right? Makes was finished 7th last time, and then just you put him in the right position, and it can do well. And Shino, I think particularly, Steiner's been very solid. It's been a bit Sting-esque for me, which is a compliment.
Yes.
Now it's now a compliment.
And
Shino, did some nasty things on Aatrox and similar. So yeah, I think another, even though again an environment that maybe not really the most conducive to success, like being kind of just randomly patched up in there into a team that's struggling, they've actually made the best of it in a big way. So I like that a lot. Have we seen any Namiru in Academy? Have we been seeing Namiru for INTZ? What's the chat on Namiru?
About INTZ, the question is, can it get worse? And the answer was yes. INTZ Academy has gone 0-11.
Oh my word!
Wow.
No.
Wow.
And much like the main roster, honestly, I look at these names. Lelis is drawing Alawi bans because he blinded it twice. And
based.
I mean, you're in an 0-11 roster and you're still drawing bans. Obviously, like your mechanics individually are pretty good. Their support has probably been their best player for me, and honestly, it feels a bit elo held, unfortunately. Namiru has been their most consistent player. Mechanics are there, so I kind of understand why INTZ might have scouted him.
Fair enough.
I don't think he's CBLOL ready by any means, but this is another roster much like the INTZ CBLOL roster, where on paper they should be fine. They should be doing pretty decent. In reality, they just cannot seem to connect somehow, and things are falling apart, and it just feels like something's fundamentally wrong. Again, could be sort of org issues.
Yeah, maybe more fuel to the org thing.
Yeah, because I don't understand why they're not performing. I've said this multiple times. On paper, they are not the weakest team mechanically, and we see that. They punish, but somehow they just can't close out games. And with the coach being Joxer, we've seen Joxer play. We've seen Joxer coach for INTZ and even for Furia in the past. So we know that while Joxer probably isn't like Coach CL level for me or Coach Belzy level for me,
he's not a career coach. Like but he knows the game. Like yeah.
So something's wrong with just the INTZ as a whole. I wouldn't look at their performances this split to be indicative of anything for this INTZ Academy roster. I still have high hopes for them, just not the split.
We're going next again in Academy. Just as I said, the whole thing, just wipe it off, and we'll see them in split 2 and see if we can see any more from them.
There are some old familiar names back in, by the way. Avenger has been struggling, actually, in the mid lane right now. So Ontropa came into that Heat 3 org and struggling. Eno is back in Academy again and showed up, I think, the last 2 weeks. In week 4, he showed up, replacing Ankrith. He has not won a single game yet.
Man.
I mean, on one hand, that shows that the new talent, the new blood's doing well in Academy. Right. Yeah, that's what we take from this.
Yeah, keep the influx flowing. So we're always having new names to come back up and give them their shot. We love that. So yeah, it's another mixed bag for Academy, I guess, but generally some interesting things moving down there. Let's take a look at a couple of community questions before we wrap up.
Okay. Yes.
So we have a question from Clock. Remember, and just as a note, these questions are in our community Discord, which you can join. There will be links to it on our socials, and you can jump in and ask us questions. Any question, realistically, within reason. It doesn't necessarily have to even be about CBLOL, as long as we're allowed to answer it on YouTube. You know what I mean? We'll probably answer it. So feel free to jump in and submit and chat to us as well. But question from Clock says, I'm feeling that only Liberty and VKS are playing the game this split. Other teams heavily rely on player performance to win. What are your thoughts on this? My immediate response to this is, up until like last week, Liberty were very heavily reliant on player performance, and I would say that they were not really playing the game necessarily. They were relying heavily on player performance. Now, that win over KaBuM was a big mark in the we actually do know how League works kind of column, but I would push back on Liberty being one of the other teams that's playing the game, and they've only just started playing the game, really. But how do you guys feel about VKS, about getting the accolade? And are there any other teams that you think deserve recognition for playing good League this season? I know I have at least one, but...
You're asking me which CBLOL team is playing
good League? Yeah, it's a tough one, yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if Liberty is always playing
exactly.
good League.
I don't think Liberty is, until last week.
No.
We'll see if they keep playing League.
I actually think this is a really good question, actually.
Yeah.
That kind of makes us think about it, because a lot of times we just see it within the context of CBLOL.
So, like, KaBuM is not, right? It seems like they were heavily relying on good performance.
Playing good League.
And then when players like Malrang or Natuno struggle, they seem to fall off a cliff and fail to put the game together.
I mean, it also kind of depends because, like, we're talking about like playing the game, but what is the game here? Because we're talking ARAMs. I think Liberty was right up there. They were definitely playing that.
Number one Brazilian ARAM team.
You just changed my mind. Sorry, hold on. Just inverted my whole way of thinking. Yes, KaBuM are the only team that are playing good league.
The best Howling Abyss team
that are actually playing. So look, I think the way the game should be played is 3v3 bot side with early dives. No, I'm serious. I think
no, actually, no. Bot side. I thought you were just saying 3v3, and I was like, okay.
No, I think it should be played
Twisted Tree Line. That's
bot
the
side
league.
dives with heavy focus on drag control and objective control. I think it should be like a nice, capable solo lane top laner, and then control mage like a Zir or Orianna or something like that in the mid lane. I think KaBuM is doing that very well. They're not winning as much, but they're losing games to like Liberty, who is playing crazy stuff, like Graves and like Ziggs. And stuff like that, and are finding wins by like what RMC said, by A-ramming at 25 minutes and winning. So yeah, I think KaBuM is playing good League of Legends. I think they're just losing best of ones.
Okay. I think Lost plays good League. I think they're playing the game.
Actually, I was just gonna say too. I think Los, they're playing it right. They have other problems, but their strategic and macro play is actually generally right on point. I do think K-Stars probably are the best for me up till this last week, where
this last week had a lot of turning points for teams, or like out of character moments for teams. I think.
Yes, I think that's the best way to put it. Very out of character, and I don't know if teams are just experimenting with stuff because they've locked top 3 or like their playoff positions. I would argue, K-Star is probably the best at playing the game. This split, Liberty this week played the best game, I think. But up to that point, I fully agree with that. Like, Liberty was just
because even like Furia had a really good, like, super clean, like, Zai Pike game that they won like very aggressively, and they weren't macro focused. They found a load of picks, they pushed advantages very heavily, and they won very cleanly doing that. So like they're playing a game, they're playing their game in that sense. It relies on them getting a lot of specialist picks that allow them to play in quite unique ways, which they were able to do. But it's not a consistent strategy that they had, because once you ban Pike, they haven't really been able to find that same energy for Zai, and Zai had an absolute shocker of a rel game, I think, at the last one on Sunday. Truly heinous rel game from Zai. So I think, as you say, last week was a bit of an outlier. But then Lost as well had like a super clean game. They had like an 18-3 kill score game win over someone decent, or maybe it was Fluxu. I think they did this too. But so like I think Loss generally play sound League. Sometimes they have bad calls in the moment. Their mechanics are generally on point, but they're not always right. Like they lost a bad Baron flip or two last week, I think, that they shouldn't have had to take. But I think generally they're playing good League, and I think VKS as well are. They're not super heavily relying on player performance. They have player performance from Gigo notably, and and the Leleko as well, I think, for sure. But like their bot lane doesn't smash. They don't necessarily like run over games by just out-handsing their opponents. They tend to just accrue good advantages and then use them.
Yeah, and I've said this about K-Stars before too. What I think they do that nobody else is doing right now is they always have a game plan coming to the game. Right from the get-go, you can almost like tell what they want to do. And they, even when behind, they are still looking to try and make plays. They never just sit back and scale, which is what a lot of other teams do, which, by the way, isn't wrong by any means. It's just that it's very reactive, and you kind of see the control of the game, whereas K-Stars doesn't. So I'd say there's like 2 and 2 half teams right now, which I would say are playing the game. I'll give half to Liberty, half to Loud. In different ways. Liberty have their half is the second half of the regular season. Loud's the second half of any game. They don't do anything before. Anything they do before 20 minutes is like really
okay,
random.
now we can just and then they start like mounting crazy comebacks and just like completely outmaneuvering their opponents at objectives. And it's not even just like outhandsing them in the fight. Like the way they approach objectives is just so much better and allows them to find these angles that are picking apart teams with leads. That it does look like a completely different team. It's insane.
And then Los and K-Stars, what we're saying, KaBuM is an interesting one that you raise, Axe, for me, because I did not think of them as a macro team, but I see what you're saying with that, and that makes me kind of like think, that there is a case to be made for KaBuM. I think right now I'm struggling to do that because I think the way their lane states have been playing out make it very difficult for them to actually play good macro.
They're holding themselves back almost from like playing a good game by setting themselves really far behind a lot in their early games. They tend to come into 15-20 minutes at least a couple of K behind these days, which is weird for them.
Like I'm seeing Seos and Malrang kind of do it, but definitely like Lonely and I don't want to just put on Natuno, but the bot lane state by the end of it often makes Seos roams
tough,
less impactful, and if he can't convert, then it kind of screws them a little bit. So it's like maybe there's a case to be made for KaBuM. But I think their lane states preclude me from saying that for now.
Not Red? You don't think Red's playing good League? No? You don't think Titan's team is playing good League? That's crazy.
They were playing Battle Arena till this week. Like, genuinely, they were playing a 2v2.
You put karaoke on Maokai, and now we're playing League. Now we're cooking on Pain, and then otherwise, we'll see.
Loud is not playing good macro League, by the way.
No, they're not. They're absolutely not.
Yeah.
And then Red
I love them, I still do, but that is not.
The one time Reds came with like a clear game plan for me was that Senna Seraphine game, and it was like the worst played game of the whole split. It was crazy. And maybe KaBuM's best played game as well, to be fair. Like it was like an absolute insane pop-off game for Natuno and House, but that was just like, I can see exactly what the point of this composition, this plan is. It just went so wrong. It's like they got punished for trying to try, I guess. I don't know. Like just picking Nocturne Orianna doesn't count as playing good League. That's not a full strategy, but it seems to be enough to win a good few League games. So maybe that is all you need. Okay, second question. Can KaBuM hope to convince Malrang to stay for the second split? From the way this team is playing and seeing that he still has a market for him elsewhere in top regions, if the team doesn't improve dramatically for playoffs, I think there's a high chance he will leave the Ninjas. So, do we think Malrang is going to say, no, I'm actually too good for this, and I will dip? Or is it going to be the classic, I'm not vibing in Brazil, I've left the building?
And shout out to Dark Knight, that question coming from 08 Dark Knight 1.
Yes, sorry, because I have streamer mode on Discord, it's cut his name off, so it just says O. But it means you're not getting pinged with Discord notices all the time. So, like I say, up until most of this split, I think Malrang's been playing really well and has been a very effective jungler, and KaBuM should probably keep him. Unless he continues to devolve into complete madness, I think KaBuM would be happy to keep him. I think he shows a lot of value. But what do you think? Do you think Malrang is going to get fed up and dip? Or do you think KaBuM should even want to keep him around?
So CBLOL teams and organizations' relationship with imports is one of the things that I was trying to move to Sao Paulo this year the most for, because I just want to understand what's going on. Because you'll watch, it's one of the most confusing things to watch from the outside looking in, is to see like one team have Parang, and Parang will just carry the league so a few splits in a row and then just leave. Other times, someone like Trick will come in, play 2 games, and flame out and leave, and you're like, what was the difference? What happened? Why did that happen? And the answer you get back from official sources, yeah. It's like, oh, okay, cool. That really nails it down. Other times, I can't remember why ZZK left, but it'll just be like, ZZK will just drop a top 4 performance trying TZ, and then he's gone the next year. It's like, okay, well, that was great. Complete mystery, no idea. And so to answer your question, it's not like a great answer, Dark Knight, but I have no freaking idea what Malrang is doing in the CBLOL in the first place, or why he would stay or why he would leave. I genuinely don't know. If we go by other imports, if that's even a metric we can use, because at the end of the day, he's his own person, he has his own reasons, right? The answer to your question is it's a total mixed bag. Totally random what Malrang's going to do. He might go on to win a dynasty, 4 splits in a row with KaBuM. He might just flame out here and we never see him again. It's like 50-50. I'm not really sure if there's anything in between. I can't think of an import that has just kind of been middling in the league for a long time. So
the only 2 that stuck around that I can think of, like in this ilk, are Wiser and Croc, right? That are like approaching naturalization levels of import that just been around for ages. Is there anyone else I'm forgetting that I've done absolutely filthy there?
I mean, Parang left. I can't even remember why.
Who you say RMT?
Oh, you mean like who's in the league now?
Yeah, like current split or like all time?
I guess potentially all time, right? Just as a metric of success of imports and the general longevity that imports tend to have when they're not finishing top 2. I guess, yeah, sure. So
he literally came state.
So when did what state did Dude come from, right? I don't include Smiley in the same category as like Malrang. He's, you know, like when did, because Dude came from from the European region, and didn't come as like, this is a big ticket import that we're using to bolster our region with talent we couldn't find here, kind of thing. Is my impression. Maybe I'm completely underselling Juge here, but maybe even especially back then, because this was like before the LEC had come, like World Finals and stuff, right?
LCS back then.
So EU didn't really have like a leg to stand on. Fnatic was like the one team that had done anything ever. And it's not like we're going to take an ex-LEC champion in Malrang, we're going to bring him over to try and, like, build this kind of roster. I mean, maybe Weiser and Croc also fall closer to Jude than they do to Malrang, because they didn't have, like, titles on titles to bring to the region, necessarily. But it's... As a fully naturalized import, Jude does count for that. Are there any others that tend to stick around? I guess what results did Juge get in his career, generally speaking?
Ooh, good question.
Because Weiser and Croc, notably for me, are very successful. And
so I know Dude found success here in Brazil. I'm not as familiar with his record.
But yeah, just here, just in the CBLOL. So like, did he show up here and then find wins and then stayed? Basically, is my point.
He won on Pain. He was a champion on Pain.
Sure. Okay. So maybe it is literally just if he wins, he stays, kind of thing, or if he goes to finals, he stays. Like, whereas Weiser hasn't won, if I'm not mistaken, but has almost won so many times that his average placing is probably the highest of anyone who's currently playing. And then Croc obviously is a 3-time champion currently. So like, maybe it is just if you win, you get a spot, or you go to the finals arena, you get to hang around, or you want to hang around. But it does seem like when you come to, especially coming from a major region to a minor region, even from a lower division, it's hard to get people to stick around. If you're not succeeding and you're not doing like a big fish little pond thing, maybe it's just hard to get players to see the value in doing that. And that might just be it for Malrang.
Yeah. And okay, so I will also say that in the GCD at least, Malrang is here till the end of the year for 2 splits. So
sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure Mer was also here for a full split, and
well, I think the difference, one of the big differences, is also who wants to leave. Right? If it's the player who wants to leave, I think it's a little bit more difficult. And complicated. Like, you'd have to pull a trick basically, where you're just like, I will int if you don't.
It has to be untenable. Like, yeah.
But other than that, like, I think most players are going to kind of play it out for the 2 splits. And for KaBuM, part of it depends on what the problem is, right? Like, we can't see behind the scenes. We don't know if it's like a player issue, if it's a coach issue, or maybe it's just they're in a bit of a slump. If they're in a bit of a slump, I think Malrang will stay, because the potential on this roster is really high. If it's a player issue, though, like there's some sort of conflict behind the scenes, and again, I'm not saying there is. I'm saying if that's the case, then that's when I think Malrang is more likely to leave. I'm assuming it's not an org issue, because to be fair, I don't think we usually hear complaints about KaBuM. I mean, they don't have the biggest fan base, but
I never hear anything about KaBuM.
Yeah, they don't hit their players. So I suspect we'll see Malrang stay for another split, unless KaBuM wants to swap out junglers.
Yeah, and they ran the Fluxy roster for 2 rosters, two splits, right? And that was like lots of money. You're bringing together lots of different parts, and they had a big slump in the first split and ended up, for them, essentially bombing below the targets they wanted to achieve. And then they did it again, and then they took the roster apart, right? So we might see literally the exact same story for a whole year and not just see it separate. But yeah, I think a lot of the times it seems to just end up to results. And obviously it's individual, but we have not yet seen a player, I think, come down from a major region to the CBLOL, finish 6th, and then stick around for a long time. We've not seen that happen, really.
No.
And even the ones that do well sometimes just dip anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, some things out of their control, right? Like Croc has to leave after this split or the split after for military service. So.
Yeah, and there will be a market for him elsewhere, as was part of Dark Knight's question. Like a name like Malrang with an LEC title, there will be a market for him on potentially low-level LEC teams, LCS teams, like LATAM. There'll be plenty of people willing to take that name on, and especially since I don't think he's had a generally bad split. So it's not like he's completely washed. So we'll see if KaBuM keeps the split. And generally, we want him to stay, I think, is reasonable, because we want these teams to attempt things with long-term in mind. That's kind of what we want to be building and doing here. And he has made some pretty cool plays, and he's a cool guy to have around. He makes exciting jungle plays. Okay. That's going to be us for this episode. We have run a little bit long, but that's fine.
Yeah, we have.
We were keeping it to time for a couple of splits, but you put me back in charge, and suddenly we're running an hour 15 or something again. Crazy how that happens. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you, RMC and Axeman, for joining me on this episode of Gringos Liberados. Everybody, our socials will be linked down below as usual. Feel free to as well join the community Discord and chat with us and ask questions and get involved with the community, and watch us on Twitch at twitch.tv/CBLOL_English every Saturday and Sunday with plenty of Brazilian League of Legends action. Have a good rest of your day, evening, night, wherever you're listening to this. Thank you very much.